I'm Trish Keiller here on the Extraordinary Kids Summit, where we are working with some amazing people to speak some insights, advice, thoughts, and research into how to help ourselves, our kids, our parents, our teachers during this time. And today, I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, but I am so thrilled to be joined with Principal Kafele today, someone who I've been following for a few years, who has amazing insight and leadership. And whether you're a teacher or parent, we're all leading our own lives right now. Principal Kafele has been in urban education for over 20 years. He's worked in turnaround schools in Newark and particularly Newark Prep. He took from Newark Tech, took from low performing to one of the highest functioning schools in America. And he's an author of The Principal 50, as well as Is My School Better Because I Lead It, and recipient of countless 150 or so educational and community awards. So we are so grateful for your time and carving out this time. You're probably being zoomed overload right now, but we appreciate this time that we can squeeze out of you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So talk to us. I know your background also is in teaching, but talk to us just about your path into educational leadership and why you're so passionate about the many, many resources and ways that you're helping leaders today.
Yeah, you know, I stumbled onto teaching just through various undergraduate school experiences. And once I got there and figured out what it was, how to be effective, then it kind of hit me after, I guess, my second year that where I really want to be is in leadership, because I felt that the things that I was accomplishing on the classroom level could be replicated en masse on the building level. So went on and got my master's degree in a year and a half and developed a relationship with central office, particularly the superintendent, because I understood instinctively that that was the person that could open that door for me, and I didn't want to compete with all the other people. So I said, let me forge relationship with him and let him come into my classroom. Let me invite him into my classroom on a regular basis. Just come anytime and see what I do. And that's what I want to replicate as a building principal. So he saw that hunger, that drive, that passion, that enthusiasm to get there. So when it was time to hire somebody, I know he had his eye on me. So I became the youngest principal in the district at that time, assistant principal first. And I did that for a year because I was hungry and let them know, him and his team, that I don't want to be here too long. I want my school. So I did it for a year and then became principal. So now those things which made me the teacher of the year for the school, the district, the county, and finalist for the state of New Jersey, I was able to now replicate on a building level at the school. And a lot of that was focused on the affective. You know, I'm looking at young people, and this is probably going to go into a different question, but I'm looking at young people and looking at the situations that they were coming out of, 90% free and reduced lunch, so high poverty, city full of low socioeconomic families. So I said, I've got to get here first, the attitude. And as we focused on the attitude, the academics just kind of followed, you know, but it couldn't be the other way around. It couldn't be academics, raised test scores, and attitudes were where they were. So we focused on attitude, and that led to advancements in achievement.
Great. So tell us more about this, what you call the attitude gap. We often talk about the achievement gap. Talk about the attitude gap. What are the outcomes? How did you start really working in that space? And has any of that shifted now in our current situation with COVID right now?
Yeah, you know, it hasn't. It's not so much that it's shifted, but it's probably become that much more relevant. But yeah, see, with my focus on attitude, going back to my undergrad days and then my teaching days, looking at my own life and my own transformation, which was major in terms of where I was and where I got to, what I've evolved into. I said, man, I did this because of attitude. You know, this young man who had spent 5 years in high school, who had attended 4 different high schools, who graduated with a 1.5 GPA and had no ambition, no aspiration, no sense of purpose, no vision, just existing day to day, for those 5 years, and then the 5 years following, still doing nothing, finally said, I need to do something. So enrolled in a school here in Jersey. Kane used to be called Kane College of New Jersey. Now it's Kane University, and graduated in 2 years summa cum laude. And many asked, how was that possible? How did you do it? Because we remember you from the old days. And I said, it's very simple. My attitude shifted. I didn't get smarter. You know, it's just it was there already, but there was mechanisms necessary to unleash it. So now attitude was that mechanism by way of that which triggered attitude, various different readings that I had done over the years. So over a short period of time. So now here I am, I want to teach because of what I've learned. And matter of fact, let me be very specific about what I learned. I stumbled, and when I say stumbled, I'm being very literal. I stumbled on African-American history. I knew nothing about African-American history beginning at the age of 23. I had never read a thing in my life on African-American history. And by me stumbling on it, it piqued my curiosity, and subsequently got me excited, because I'm thinking to myself, why have I never been exposed to this information? So I became obsessed with it. And I was reading several books a week while maintaining a full load through graduating in 2 years of the 4-year school, maintaining this full load, but doing all this reading and seldom sleeping. So what it was doing to me was it was introducing myself to myself. It was reintroducing me to me. I didn't know the shoulders upon which I stood. So now, fast forward, I become a teacher. I became a teacher through what they call here in Jersey the alternate route. That means that I didn't go the traditional route. I was in the business where I graduated with a marketing degree. So I went into the business world, but I didn't want to be there. I didn't want any parts of it. So I said, I think I want to teach, because I want to teach this information that I learned, that I've self-taught. So the problem was, that's not curriculum, but the asset was, it was my foundation. So I went into the school, got this position in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, and it was all I knew. I didn't know anything else because I didn't go the traditional route. So I began to be something that there was no language for yet. It came later. I went in with this approach of cultural responsiveness, cultural relevance, cultural sensitivity, equitable classroom practices. No, that language, no one used it. I didn't use it, but I instinctively knew that that's what the youngsters needed. So they began to soar, and hence, a few years later, all those Teacher of the Year recognitions. So I just took that and applied it to the building level, and we were able to do the same thing. I said, if these youngsters are going to soar the way we want them to, and we want to close this thing, to go right to your question, this thing called the achievement gap. I had coined this term. I said, we must first close the attitude gap, because if the achievement gap is what it is, and we ask the question, why is it what it is, and we begin to peel back layers, we'll see a lot of variables, but right there at the core is the attitude of the learner, the attitude of the educator, the attitude of the parent. So I said, the achievement gap's not my issue. I want to close the attitude gap. So I gave it a definition. I said, the attitude gap is the gap between those students who have the will, and that's the key word, the will to achieve excellence, and those who do not. So you got a student, you got a classroom or a school, and you got this student who's fired up. He or she has the will. He or she wants to soar. But then at the opposite extreme, you got this student who justifiably does not want it because of whatever's going on in his or her life, right? So I don't see the correlation, this youngster says, between me giving you maximum effort and this thing you call success later on in my life. I just don't see it. So this youngster is brilliant, as this youngster is brilliant, and everybody in between. I said, I want to close this gap, because if I can close this gap, the academic gap, the achievement gap will work itself out because this youngster will be excited about being in the classroom in the first place. So that's where this whole attitude gap came from. So when I decided to write the book, my intentions were very simple. My intentions were to alter the conversation and to have educators talking about closing not only the achievement gap, but the attitude gap. That was back in 2013. And now here we are in 2020, and I hear it all the time. You know, people are talking about closing the attitude gaps in their schools, in their districts, in their classrooms, because they see that I cannot get youngster to embrace if youngster doesn't have the willingness to embrace it in the first place.
So can you give us a couple ways that you started doing that work with your teachers, right? I mean, I think teachers, right, and know that, and then also try to balance time, instructional minutes, academic, right? Like what are some tangible things you did for those listening of what they can start to do, even maybe from afar with their kids right now?
Yeah. You know, with this attitude gap, I developed a framework, which goes to your question. And I developed these 5 strands that comprise this framework. And I'll give you the strands. I won't go too in depth with it because that's a full day, 6-hour presentation. But the strands are as follow. Number 1, matter of fact, before I give you the strands, let me put it in a broader context. Closing the attitude gap is all about the climate and culture of the building. Right? What do you feel when you walk in there? What is the mood of that school in that classroom? And then the culture of the school. How are we living here? What's the lifestyle of the individuals and the collective of this school? So with that, the framework. So the first strand of the framework says the environment for learning. That's the subtitle, the environment for learning, which asks the question, do I provide my students with an environment of excellence? Like what is this environment that they're walking into? So to give you a quick example, to kind of hammer it home, to be concrete, I remember back in the 90s when I was a teacher, and my principal, superintendent decided to departmentalize the entire district from grade 3 on up. So we had departments in 3rd grade, right, by subject area. So the students were changing classes. The principal was old school, been in this thing for a long time. She was not used to students changing classes. So students would talk in the hallway between classes. They weren't yelling and screaming, but it was something that she wasn't accustomed to hearing. And I guess it bounced off the walls, old buildings. You hear it downstairs when we were up on the 3rd floor. So long story short, she called my team, which was the 5th grade, down to her office after school one day and started yelling at us and screaming and said that starting tomorrow, the students will not change class, although it was the superintendent's directive, and instead the teachers will change. Now, I knew going into that first strand, the environment for learning. I talk about the intentionality of what students see and hear all the time, but in this case, see, hear, feel, and experience, but in this case, what they see. And those walls, those 4 walls and the ceiling and the desk were reflective of the student body. So in other words, you walk into that room, you knew and felt you were at home. It was you. It wasn't some commercialized room where there are things that you can't relate to and identify with. There were your pictures on the wall. There were your awards on the wall in a zillion different categories that I could come up with of ways to recognize students. There was your work on the wall. There were the goals you set for this marking period on the wall. I mean, just so much. It was so just so rich in student centeredness. So now here's this principle. You guys are going to change and your students stay put. I'm the youngest teacher in the building at that time. So I said, Doc, wait a minute. I said, I can't teach in someone else's environment because those walls are an extension of me. And I can't teach in an environment that's an extension of somebody else that may have a different agenda. So she yelled at me and said, Kafele, I suggest you strap that room to your back and carry it with you because you're moving. So after the meeting, I stayed and I convinced her that I needed that space. So I'm saying all that to say, and she acquiesced. So I'm saying all that to say this. that environment was a major part of why those young people were excelling, because they walked into a space that welcomed them, a space that said, welcome home. This is about you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The environment for learning. Strand number 2, attitude towards students, which asks the question, do I believe in them? But it also asks the question, what do I believe about them? And then it goes at one more level, one more tier. What do I believe about myself as it relates to them? So in a workshop situation, we go hard on those 3 questions, right? So I could spend 30 minutes just going with us and my audience, going through a deep self-reflection and conversation about whether or not I believe in them. Because as I probe, we find that there are people in audiences that on the surface, they believe in them. But then as we go deep, what do you believe about them? What do you believe about yourself? We self-discover that, I don't know if my belief in them is all that as intense as I thought it was. Strand 3, relationship with students, which asks the question, do I know them? But the bigger question is, what do I know about them? See, their experiences, their realities, their challenges, their obstacles, their needs, their interests, their goals, their aspirations, how they learn, how they think, how they make sense out of information, how they process information, what motivates them, what inspires them. Do I really know you, right? Beyond the name on the roster. Number 4, compassion for students. Oh, matter of fact, let me go back. What do I know them? What do I know about them? But then the third one, what do I know about myself as it relates to them? Number 4, compassion for students, strand number 4, which asks the question, do I care about them? But that's not even the real question. The real question is, do they perceive that I care about them? Because their perceptions are what matter. As I tell my audiences, we can sit in that room, that auditorium all day and just talk about how much we love kids, how compassionate we are about those children. But if those children don't feel that, know that, then the bottom line is we don't care about them the way we think we do, right? And then the final one, final strand, relevance in instruction, which asks the question, do I even know who they are? And that's the whole question of being culturally responsive, culturally relevant, right? Equitable in my practices. That's what that's all about. So there's a lot there, but that's the framework for closing the attitude gap. And I might add, there's a secondary definition with the closing the attitude gap definition. When I wrote the book in 2013, I had my mind on the students. But then after writing it, soon after, I said, man, I should have talked about the attitude of the teacher, because here I gave it this secondary definition, which we'll have when I revise it. The gap between those educators who have the will to be amazing at their craft and those who do not, right? So then that's a whole discussion. Hey, teacher, do you have the will to be amazing, meaning to take your work to that level? But by the same token, are you able to treat that which you do as a craft? Like, this is your thing, and you said, I want to be the best version of myself at this work. So for me as a classroom teacher, that was not just my work, it was my craft. It was my mission. As a principal, it wasn't just my work, my place of employment, but it was my craft. I wanted to be the best principal that I could possibly be. And quite frankly, being vulnerable and transparent, as I tell anybody, being a speaker is my craft. And I try to be the best version of myself as a presenter with every audience that I speak to.
Well, so much of your work, even in the title, one of my favorites, who I share with principals who've then told me they've also given it to other principal friends, so thank you for this, but is in self-reflection and this looking within. And right, we kind of can't really grow and learn until we really go in there. So can you share with us some insights in how you got into that place and what sort of processes you might use to really essentially take yourself to task? That, you know, I loved in your book when you said at the end of every day, I asked myself, what is this school a better place because I'm here, and for teachers to ask that too. What are some processes we can use to self-reflect? Yeah,
and you know, in terms of where it originated from, I'm a sports guy. Sports was the one thing that kept me in high school. And so being it's my thing, and it's tough during this pandemic, being for those of us who love sports, because we can't watch sports, right? So unless you want to watch old footage of some games from 20 years ago and all that kind of thing. But what I noticed in sports, what I picked up on as I became a teacher and a principal, is that at the end of any game, assuming it's not the last game of the season, so at the end of any game, the preparation begins with the study of the film of that game. Someone that doesn't know sports would think that the preparation begins with practice the next day, but it doesn't. It begins with now sitting in a room with a projector and a screen, and studying the film of that game, but not watching it like it's television, but breaking it down frame by frame. What worked? Why did it work? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? What do we need to enhance? What do we need to purge? What do we need to adjust? And so on. And then looking at the film of the opponent and doing the same of the forthcoming opponent and doing the same thing, so that now we know their tendencies, but we know what we did to get to where we are and what adjustments we need to make in practice. So now we go to practice, but we keep going back to the film throughout the course of the week in a football situation. So now I'm saying all they're doing is self-reflecting, but they're doing it through film. So I asked the teacher, the administrator, whomever, if in the world of sports, they're spending so much time watching film. In many cases, they're spending more time watching film than they are practicing, right? So if they're spending that kind of time watching film, hey teacher, hey principal, how much time do you spend watching your film? Right? And it's somewhat of a trick question, because I know they don't have a camera following them around. Although now with the advent of cameras on phones, that's doable. It's very doable with a partner who can film your lessons for you very easily, as opposed to the old school ways where you had to have a projector set up and all that the camera set up on a stand and all that kind of stuff. So no, you good. So now here I'm saying, but teacher, you don't need a camera. All you need is a mirror, figuratively speaking, symbolically. You have to be intentional about engaging in the self-reflection of yourself. So it's these 4 levels: self-reflection, self-assessment, towards self-adjustment, towards self-improvement, right? So the self-reflection is just letting the DVD turn. And teachers used to ask me, or educators, at what point of the day should I hit the play button in terms of what I'm looking at? And I said, hit the play button for when you woke up in the morning, right? Not when you arrived on campus. Hit that play button, look and see how you woke up. What was your frame of mind when you woke up? What are the things you did to prepare for the day as you were getting ready? What kind of stimuli did you let inside? Did you let some news inside, or did you let something inspirational, uplifting inside? Because I say your attitude is extremely fragile. It's more so fragile than glass. So you have to protect it and guard it with your life, because anything could put a dent in it, if not shatter it. So you have to be careful about what you let inside, right? So me, I wouldn't watch the news before school. I don't watch the news before a keynote address or a presentation. But if there's something egregious I need to know about, I got people around me who will tell me, okay, thanks, I needed to know that, particularly when I was a principal, because there are things I probably needed to know, but I had an inner circle of people who would tell me. So now I'm watching that film to see who I was, how I greeted students, what was my message, how did I spend my day, right? And on, and how did I talk to teachers, what, on and on. And then I'm going to assess it. I'm going to evaluate me. I'm not waiting for the evaluator of record to tell me of my effectiveness, because my mirror can tell me in real time. And it's going to be brutally honest, probably more so than the evaluator. It's just a matter of having the audacity to look in it, right? And then it's going to tell me that the adjustments need to be made. There's no 2 days where you were so perfect that you don't need to make changes for tomorrow. You just have to have the audacity to go through the film session, right? So now I'm called for self-reflection. So now I'm going to look at my film, and I'm going to make certain adjustments for tomorrow, so that I can improve, self-improvement. So with that title you use, that book cover, is my school a better school? Because, and the emphasis is on that word, that's why you'll notice it's in capital letters, because I lead it. I asked myself that question literally every day of my career. I would stand in front of the building and look at it and ask myself the question. And on many of those days, the answer was an emphatic no, it is not. And that's because I was hard on myself, and I had two particular, what's the word I'm looking for? Two particular areas that I said, non-negotiables, that's the word. Two non-negotiables that if these two weren't in place, then we have a problem. Number one, student engagement. And the other one, number two, visiting classrooms, right? So if I, instructional leadership. So if I wasn't engaged in instructional leadership the way that I want, that I felt I should, right? The way that I preach, and I didn't visit classrooms. I didn't have a pre-observation conference with a teacher. I didn't have a post-observation conference. Then I'm saying I got to go back to the film to figure out why. Because as long as the leadership is not engaged in intense, sustained instructional leadership, that school is leading itself instructionally without any involvement from me. So those two criteria, those were my two non-negotiables: instructional leadership, student engagement. I have to have conversations with young people. We got to talk. And if I'm not talking to kids, then what do they need me for? That was, and see, and that's not me imposing that thought process onto others who will see this video. That's me saying these were my non-negotiables personally, which allowed me to go to my mirror and assess whether or not I felt that I was effective for that school.
Well, in the current climate, I think we're catapulted a little bit into even more self-reflection because we're doing so much new stuff, right? Yeah. Especially our educators communicating, teaching in this whole different way. How right now are you encouraging all the leaders who you're working with and educators to prioritize where we should be resting our attention right now with our kids, and in particular, how do we think about closing up the year with them as schools have, mostly now across the nation confirmed that they won't be going back? What are you speaking into leaders and teachers right now? Jersey just declared their close today. I just watched it. Here's the thing. I'm gonna give you my short answer because I know that we're not on here all day. And I was doing one of my spontaneous lives about 2 weeks ago. And it was meant to answer that question. And I told folks I'd be on for 30 minutes answering the question. And next thing I knew, I was on for 2.5 hours answering that question, which was my question for me in terms of what I was presenting. Yeah. So I'm gonna give you the short answer. And I think what really stands out for me with that is as leader understanding, being cognizant of, a leader understands it, but being cognizant of that that leader's home is the main office of the school, right? And those children's homes are the classrooms of the school. So now I'm saying to the leader, if that's the case, I'm going to give you 2 points. I'll keep it short. Number one, if that's the case, that those homes are the classroom, yet we know that every student doesn't have access to a computer or connectivity. We know that. But those who are on, for the sake of this discussion, I'm saying, hey, principal, you have to be in touch with that staff 5 days a week. And under normal circumstances, I know no teacher wants to go to a staff meeting. If we could have one a month, I think most teachers would be very happy, right? But this is not normal circumstances, because that one day that you don't have that Zoom meeting with your staff, that's that one day you really don't know what went on in that building, right? I mean, they could all send you an email, but who would want to read 100 emails, right? So this way I can put my 100 staff members on this screen and I can deliver my message first to them, my thoughts to them, which may be just motivational, inspirational thoughts, may not have anything to do with instruction and learning. Just might be me making an attempt to keep them fired up because I know they're dealing with their own challenges outside of teaching and learning. So with that, I'll have that platform. But now, while they're all looking at me and I'm looking at them, I want to give them an opportunity to talk to me about whatever challenges they're dealing with in school, right? Personal stuff, they could write me or call me. But in terms of school, what's going on, somebody? What's happening with your students? What's happening with any particular students? Are there any students where situations extreme? I mean, and I can go on and on with that, but just having that face-to-face with my staff
every day. So at the end of the day, I can know comfortably I've had a conversation with my school, and I feel pretty comfortable with my knowledge base of what's going on within the school. So that's number one. But number two, in terms of principle, I would want to speak with staff on a regular basis to just confirm with them that teaching and learning are never ever the priority when you log on to that computer, right? We'll get to it, but when we jump on here, jumping into a math lesson, jumping into a language arts lesson, it can never ever be the priority. Because you think about, as I've been saying on these Zoom presentations for the past several weeks, you think about that youngster that's in a home environment that before the pandemic was a super challenging home environment, right? It could have been abusive verbally, it could have been abusive physically, it may not be abusive to that youngster, but maybe abusive toward other people in the house, and he or she has to witness it. There could be alcohol, there could be drugs, there could be all sorts of things going on in that house, the unimaginable, and this youngster is seeing that on a regular basis. Well, those youngsters exist. Those are very real youngsters in schools in all 50 states. Now, global pandemic happens, stay-at-home orders happen, social distancing happens. And now that youngster, prior to the pandemic, if that's the environment I'm living in, at least at about 7 o'clock in the morning, I could escape it. And I could go to this other place that makes me feel a little bit more whole. And if they had an after school program, then I could stay even more hours, and I could get in breakfast, lunch, and dinner while I'm at my school. If I've got a strong relationship with staff there, which I tell staff on these Zooms every day, if you didn't have it back then, I don't know how you're gonna get it through the screen, but at least use that as your anchor moving forward, that relationship matters, so that now when that youngster sees you on the computer, not only does youngster see you, but youngster can't wait to see you because of what home may represent for that percentage of youngsters I'm referring to now. So now in this situation, that youngster's trapped in that environment 24/7 every day, right? So I can't escape it now. I don't get to get away from it for a little while. I'm there. So I'm saying, therefore, teacher, that youngster is not looking forward to math right now. That youngster may just be looking forward to hearing some words of encouragement from you, particularly if you earn trust, right? So now that youngster may just want to hear you say something encouraging, something to make him or her feel that the future is still bright, regardless. But you go in there and you jump right into the math lesson and didn't consider what that youngster's reality was, particularly like on a Monday morning, what that youngster's reality was Friday after you finished, and Saturday and Sunday, right? And let's compound it with, maybe it's hot, like in the South. It's not really hot up here in Jersey yet, but in the South, it's hot. So inside, and we don't have speaking for the family, we don't have a air conditioning unit. So now it's 100 degrees inside. We're forced to stay inside. I'm dealing with all this stuff I'm dealing with at home, and my mother lost her job, right? So we don't know how the bills are going to get paid. All those kinds of things, if teacher does not know that life intimately, like knows it from afar, read about it, but doesn't know it through experience, teacher has to stop and pause and consider what youngster may be dealing with, and thereby move accordingly.
And as you said, there's so much more you could speak into in that area.
Hours at night, just on that.
But you also have so many resources available for people. So why don't you share with us so people can go further and deeper and just listen to your words are so inspiring, obviously. And
yeah, I have a website which I call I call it a professional development institution, and I got so much on there. It's principalkafele.com, KAFELE, principalkafele.com. And I've got I have 9 YouTube channels, but I got 4 on the website. A channel where I'm just speaking to the young people, about 225 videos. a channel where I'm speaking to the teachers, a channel where I'm speaking to administrators, and a channel that I call Throwback, which is just recordings of me from back in the 90s. If someone has a curiosity to see me back in them days doing this same work. And then there are other channels for parents, for example, on YouTube, which you can just type in my name and see all those various channels. But then and that's about 500 plus videos. Then I have the books. They're on the website, and I've got 11. I got a brand new one that comes out on May 11th, so I'm excited. The Assistant Principal 50, Critical Questions for Meaningful Leadership and Professional Growth. So that amongst the other 10 books. And then the website has the blog posts and articles that I've written, about 60 altogether over the years, and that's there. And then I want your audience to know that I do a lot of Facebook Live and Twitter Live. In fact, I do a lot of social media. So if you're not on social media, you need to get on social media, because all the professional development that you'll ever need from anywhere is right on Twitter in particular. Forget about what I just said about social media. Let's just say Twitter, right? Twitter, it's there. Everything that an educator needs is on Twitter. You just got to be there. So I use it as one of my major platforms to disseminate information. So right now I've got this 18-week every Saturday for the next 18 weeks. Well, we did one, so the next 17 weeks, where I'm spending just 30 minutes, but going in hard, talking about effective assistant principal leadership. So we had 2,000 people between Twitter and Facebook that watched it live last Saturday, and I know those numbers are going to increase. And then so far, since it's been on, we've got 20,000 who have watched since Saturday. So a lot of information. People are excited, and I do that for teachers. It's just this is not the season I'm doing it, but I do this for teachers. I do it for principals. I do it for parents. I do it for children. Young people. So I mix it up. So this is a season of assistant principals for the next 18 weeks.
Great. Well, thank you. And just final question, just one thing that, the greatest outcome that you see when we close the attitude gap, what is it? Where's the carrot that we're all looking for with that close of the gap?
When the student says, thank God that I was your student, because being your student has made me the man or the woman that I am today. And I could say that so definitively because I re-encounter those individuals as adults all the time. I think the time it really meant most to me was out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on a cruise ship, and a young man that I did not recognize walked up on me, because he was 15 years older with a beard, and said, "Principal Kafele, you were my principal, and I'm the man I am today. I'm able to bring my family on this cruise ship. I own a tractor trailer, but I want to own a fleet. And the inspiration for doing that was you when I was in 8th grade." He said, when I got to high school, there was really nothing to sustain me. When I got to college, there was nothing to sustain me. What you poured into myself and my peers in 8th grade sustained us over the years. That's it for me. When that student, because we're talking attitude, we're not talking about me being a superior math teacher. We're not talking about me being a superior principal. We're talking about my ability to help a youngster to feel good about him or herself.
Amazing, Brett. Yeah, tears to my eyes. Thank you for your leadership, taking the time to share with us. And everyone, this is the go-to for when I'm in self-doubt. Get inspired, jump on Twitter, grab one of Principal Kafele's books. It really changes your attitude in the process as you stay strong to support kids and ourselves during this time. Principal Kafele, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll look forward to staying in touch with you. Everyone else, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.